For those of you who are new to the ERPfixers webcast series, we're going to go through some housekeeping things while all of you guys are starting to pile in. So just so you guys are aware of what we'll be doing today, once we get started, we'll go through the presentation. There will be a demo at some point in the presentation. We ask that you guys please provide any questions that you have throughout the presentation in either the chat box or the QA box. You can find either one of these at the bottom of your screen. I'll be collecting these questions throughout the presentation. If time allots today, we should have about 10 minutes. We'll get to these questions. If we cannot get to everybody's questions today, do not worry. For those of you that registered, we will be sending over a copy of the recording as well as a copy of the questions that you guys asked and the answers to those questions. Of course, if any of you guys have additional questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to one of us. You can reach us at info@ERPfixers.com. I'll give it about 30 more seconds and we'll go ahead and get started. Seeing some familiar faces. Hello, John. Good to see you again. Sarah, hello. Thank you to all of you who are joining us again. And thank you guys who are new. I'm seeing a lot of new faces as well. So thank you very much. Let's go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to ERPfixers Ask a Fixer webcast. It is November 15th, and today we are talking about organizational flexibility in S/4HANA. We have our founder of ERPfixers, Paul Ovigele, who will be presenting with us today. So what is ERPfixers? We provide top quality experts in all the major SAP modules. We offer SAP implementation and support, SAP best practices assessment, material ledger conversion, enhanced cost component reports, and an S/4HANA transitional roadmap. If you'd like more information, you can visit our website at ERPfixers.com. Next slide, please. Paul Ovigele is our founder at ERPfixers, and he has worked as an ERP financials consultant since 1997. He specializes in implementing the FI and CO modules along with their integrated areas for companies in various industries. He speaks at numerous SAP conferences, offers strategic and functional level trainings, and he's considered one of the leading experts on material ledger. Please also check out his books, 100 Things You Should Know About Financial Accounting, Reconciling COPA in the General Ledger, Introducing the Material Ledger and S/4HANA, and the second edition of the Material Ledger and S/4HANA. We have 2 editions of that. You can also find that on our website. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Paul. Thank you so much, Paul.
Thanks, Jess. Hello, everyone. Happy Wednesday. And thanks for coming to this webcast session. I haven't done one in, I think, a year, so I'm happy to be here and interact with you. So as Jess says, this session is on organizational flexibility in S/4HANA. The agenda is, first we'll talk about profit centers, because that's the core object right now that's being used with this tool. Then we'll talk about what organizational flexibility is and how to configure and process organizational change. So first of all, we'll start off with profit centers in SAP and what that is, because that is what the core of this tool does. And just so you know, for anyone who's checked out some blogs I did way back, maybe 10, maybe even 15 years ago, I actually spoke about this topic in the ECC. It was called Profit Center Reorganization. And I'll talk a little more about that. This is pretty much what that is, but in S4, and obviously with the bells and whistles that S4 has. Right. So let's start with Profit Center, because the whole basis of this tool is focusing predominantly on profit centers, at least to start with. I'll talk about that later. And, a big reason why SAP brought this tool out was because when profit centers were introduced by SAP, a lot of companies didn't know what to do with it. This was back I'm talking, way back, right? They didn't because other accounting packages or ERP, well, not really ERP, but other software that dealt with enterprise systems, they didn't have anything called Profit Center. In fact, I think if you Google the term Profit Center, you might see one Investopedia article, but everything else is SAP, even if you don't enter SAP, because SAP pretty much kind of popularized this term. But a lot of companies didn't know what to do with it, so they use it for so many different things, right? So some examples are using it for product line, using it for regions, field, district, location, plant, using it for functions, production or sales. Very typically when I started, a lot of companies used it just whatever the cost center was, they'd have equivalent one-to-one profit center. Obviously now things have evolved. People know a little more how to use it, but some companies have profit center designed in a way that's not really optimal to the way they want to report their business. So when SAP first brought out this tool, that was one of the first kind of use cases for the tool, is to say, hey, we know you organize your profit center, you set up your profit center structure this way when you started SAP, but now you can do a sort of reorganization so it's aligned with your business enterprise, right? So typical profit center use cases is to create responsibility income statements. And then, when the new GL came out in 2005, you had some other features that were released that allowed you to have balance sheets by profit center, full balance sheet by profit center. There was always some functionality to have some balance sheets, but with the document splitting, segment reporting, you could have full balance sheets by profit center. So one question that we have, a poll question we have, I'm going to hand over to Jess, is just to ask the question, what do people use profit centers for? I've mentioned those three. Maybe it'd be interesting to see what the percentage is that they use profit centers for, or if there's something else. So Jess, I'll hand that over to you to take the poll. And Jess, I'm not sure if you're talking. If you are, you might be on mute.
I'm not. They are participating in the poll, so I don't know if you can
Got
see
it. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so product line, region of plant. Actually, where it says choice function, it really just means function. So it's product line, region of plant, choice function. I think maybe that's why there's 0 with the choice function, because it really should just say function. But product line is significantly the most, and that is actually pretty much in line with what profit centers with what I've seen from other clients, profit center being used for product line. And that's fine. And you can do your income statement reporting on that. I would say though that profit centers evolved from product line to being used more for as an enterprise structure, almost like a mini company code. That's pretty much where I think SAP's idea for profit centers is now. And the reason is because there's so many other attributes in SAP that you can report your product line into, margin analysis, segments, several other things. So profit center has been given a promotion, right? And that is kind of where I think it sits, which is why if you look, even in ECC, it went from CO PCA to ECPCA. ECPCA stands for enterprise controlling, and even now it's part of the GL. So, but thanks for that poll, everyone. Very kind of very useful to know what people use it for. So let's talk. The next couple of slides will be on how are profit centers derived in SAP. So in the P&L, right? It's most all postings affecting primary cost and revenue are assigned to cost objects. We all know what cost objects are. Cost centers, WBS, production orders, internal orders. They always have to have a profit center, right? So the profit center is derived from there. Then non-operating accounts, like accounts that are not really part of your operating expenses, if you code those directly to a profit center, then obviously they will have one. They wouldn't naturally inherit one because they have no cost object. If you have a billing document, the profit center usually comes from the material, the item that you're selling. If you have an invoice receipt, like accounts payable, that would come from the material and plant that's linked to a purchase order. Obviously, if the purchase order does not have, if it's not inventory related, it will come from the cost object, right? The purchase order will either be material or it'll be an asset or it'll be an expense. So every which way that the profit center that can be derived. If you're doing goods movements, it'll come from a material plant. If you're doing direct postings from FI, it'll be either a direct or indirect assignment. So direct meaning you manually enter the profit center, indirect meaning it's derived from another cost object. Other P&L accounts you could do, you could have a automatic account determination, you could have a substitution, many other ways to do that. For balance sheet accounts, they're maintained with an automatic account assignment and PCA customizing. That pretty much is, anyone know that transaction 3KEH or now FAGL 3KEH? If you had like a bank account or some GL account that did not have any natural other object to derive the profit center, you can just default it in a table. You could also code profit centers directly in the balance sheet, and you can derive it using document splitting. So if you wanted a full balance sheet by profit center, you could use document splitting. We look at assets. Assets normally have a cost center with them assigned, and with an asset, the profit center is derived from the cost center or even internal order. And even with an asset, you can actually just have a profit center there without these, if you don't have these objects, right? Inventory comes from material plant. AR and AP come from document splitting. And then other balance sheet items can have a customized table that has the profit center assigned to the account. And then obviously you could have a baddie or a user exit or substitution. There's many other ways to do that if they don't flow naturally from the system. Okay, so that was profit center. So just to set the stage for the main object being reorganized. So what is this organizational flexibility? And I always credit SAP for coming out with these terms. I don't know if they have a marketing department that does this. Sometimes like the terms are a little overkill, or just seems a little too much, but hey, we're stuck with it. That's what it is. So why would organizational changes occur? It's normally when the business model changes due to internal or external factors. And they're generally initiated by management decisions. Okay, I mean, we live in a period of uncertainty right now. Definitely, it's always been the case. It's trended that way, but the last 3 years, as everybody knows, has been really disruptive. The number of businesses that have changed, merged, acquired other companies, all that stuff shows you how much potential there is for a lot of organizational change. Now, when this happens, there could be a need to restructure reporting and responsibility units. And this would lead to adjustments in master data, but also transfers from the old postings to the new postings. Okay. Something to note about this, this organizational change is it's what they call Profit Center Reorganization, right? Now, when I was thinking of what topic I was going to talk about, I actually looked at the S/4HANA 2022 release notes for finance and accounting, and there were only 2 or 3 that to me jumped out as being useful, at least to the customer base I work with, and I work with a lot of customers. Like, what have they been asking me over the past few years that as some of the new releases, the new features satisfy? This jumped out as, like I said, top 3. But what is interesting about this feature, and I'll kind of mention the functionality, is that SAP hardly mentioned it. They were promoting other tools, which I thought no one really cares about some of the other stuff they were talking about. And this is an available tool. I have my own theories of why that is, but it's interesting how good this is, and it's not being really talked about by SAP. So scenarios for reorganization, you can decide for your profit center that you just want to restructure the reporting hierarchy or the responsibility level of the profit center. In that case, you don't need this tool because there's another tool called Global Accounting Hierarchy. If you're just changing what nodes or what, if you were saying, for example, a certain profit center or responsibility area at a future date is going to change what the reporting structure that it kind of rolls into, you don't need to do that. You can use the global accounting hierarchy, very slick Fiori app that allows you to change to create change hierarchies for several dimensions in SAP, and also allows you to have a validity date for when that change is being done, which I don't believe you have that in ECC. Okay. Now, if you want to correct your profit center, so you had master data that had the incorrect profit center, you do need this tool. If you want to have a complex reorganization, so something in the enterprise has changed, you also need this tool. It's just saying that you don't necessarily need it for all kinds of profit center change, but if you're correcting or you have a complex restructure, then this tool is handy. Something else to note, I mentioned that years ago I did a session about this. And in fact, I think Dawn Watts, she did one of our webcasts last year on the ECC Profit Center Reorg tool. It was available from ECC 6, EHP 5. But the thing with this tool is you needed an SLT license to have. It wasn't part of the standard SAP license. Also, there were very limited features in the GUI. You needed to have NWBC, so the NetWeaver business client for it. And then you also need to activate these business functions in order for that to work. So even though I've spoken about it, 10 years ago or whatever, and I had clients ask about what do we need to do if we need to change a profit center? How do we update everything that's out there? Which is a very, very typical, this is not some kind of, remote kind of, exceptional thing they're asking for. This is part of business, right? Things change, enterprises change, people make mistakes. There was nothing. It was either, okay, you have to get changed from one to the other, then go change the master data, change your purchase orders, sales orders, production orders, a mess, and then wait for some to bleed through. So this was interesting because this did all that. It had a very robust tool, but very limited for what you could, who could use it. You had to pay more. You had to, activate all these functions. You had to have NWBC, which typically, hardly anyone used. And so this is now only ECC. This is not in S4 at all. Okay, so the functionality I'm talking about is totally brand new. Okay. Now, this manage organizational changes. This is the new feature, right? It allows you to divide, combine, and replace profit centers. It's a general tool. It doesn't require a special license. And my cynical take on this is probably why SAP is not promoting this more, because part of S4, they'd rather promote something you're going to pay extra for. Because otherwise, I'm like, this is doing everything that one does, and it's totally available with your standard license. It should be, I think this is actually pretty, is functionality that more people should know about. Now, of course, it's not available only if you're on S4. You have to be on S422 and beyond. So if you're on an earlier version, you will not have it. Okay. And then also most of the functionality is carried out with the Manage Organizational Changes app. One disclaimer I want to make is that we have not implemented this tool for any client yet, right? One, because it's new, right? It's relatively new. Not every client is an S422. And then you have to be an S422 and have to have this requirement, right? Just in the last year. So we haven't, but two things I'll assure you of. One, we have tested this tool thoroughly in our sandbox system to check out all the features. And two, I've implemented it, the old tool, right? So I pretty much know how the business process and how you would plan a project like this, right? And I would say actually the previous tool, as you know, limited as it was to get um, uh, for a customer to sign up for or to use, it's actually pretty good. That's not, I wouldn't say this is miles, this S4HANA tool is miles better than that. They're pretty much on par with each other. So even if you have the old one and you're still in ECC, it's not a, that's not a bad tool at all. You're not losing much. So what are the processes of organizational change? There's 4 major steps. First, you prepare. So define what effective date, normally in the future, you want to make the change. Identify which objects you want to change. Then you simulate. Simulate is an optional step. It means that, okay, now I've planned what is going to change in my profit center. Now I want to make, simulation is if you want to make a transfer posting from the old to the new. You may not always want to do that. Like you might want to change profit center A to B, but you just want master data updated. You might one, not care about the transactional posting because in the first place, you may not even have some of the whatever you benefit from a transactional posting like document splitting, you might not have that. So it might not be necessary to do that. You might just want to change all the master data and the downstream object like sales, purchase orders, and let every new transaction from that point go to the new profit center. But if you do want to do a transfer posting, meaning saying, tell me every open item I have, I want to also switch that, and that's going to do a GL posting. And you can simulate that posting even before you run the job, right? It's pretty cool because one thing the classic or the old PC reorg doesn't have, it doesn't have a simulation tool that actually posts. This uses an extension ledger to do that posting. So it's not like a test run. No, this is actually posting to the Universal Journal, just using an extension ledger, but it's doing exactly what it would post if you did execute that program. The third one is activate. This is also an optional step. And it's optional because this is saying, hey, I put a date out in the future when I want this to be done, but yeah, I just want to activate it now, right? So if you don't activate it, it's just going to wait till the future date, or it's going to either wait till the future date or consider any documents that you post today, but with the posting date of that future date. That's how slick it is. So even if you haven't reached that date, if you post a document now and say, I want to post it January next year, and that's after the effective date, it would also make sure it has the new profit center, even if you have the old one now. Then complete is it checks that the profit center reassigned. It just does all the checks to make sure the tool has done everything correctly with no errors. Okay, so what are the objects that are impacted by organizational change? Materials, internal orders, WBS, your usual objects that are assigned to profit center. There are some exceptions, none within the normal 4 standard SAP account assignments, but I think maybe real estate objects and a couple of others may not be, but these are most of the main objects that are profit center relevant. In the tool, which I'm going to show soon, the only objects you need to specify for organizational change are the base objects. So the materials, the internal orders, WBS elements, production orders. You don't need to do sales and purchase orders. Those are dependent objects, because a sales order's profit center normally comes from a material or from a WBS element, right? So once you say you're going to change it, you specify the material you want to change or the group of materials. It's going to go and look for everything associated with that, every downstream document. Okay, you don't have to specify that too. Okay, how do you configure org change? So one of the first things is you want to define an extension ledger. Hopefully everybody knows what an extension ledger is, but if you don't, an extension ledger is an alternative ledger to your main ledger that you can use for multiple things that have different scenarios. You could use it to do simulations of your foreign currency valuation. You could use it to post what if, you could just post manual JEs for a different gap, or you could do several other things, predictive accounting. There's several things that you could do in extension ledger. But the extension ledger is also used for Profit Center Reorg if you want to simulate, right? So very simply, all you do is just set up the extension ledger. The config for this is very simple. The key thing is you have to make sure the extension ledger type, because there's 4 different types, is the one that says line items with technical numbers / deletion possible, okay? What does that mean? That means when the simulation posting is made, it creates a document number. But when the real posting is made, it deletes the document number. And for those of you who worked in SAP in the SAP space as long as I have, the word delete of document doesn't make sense, because I remember throughout my SAP career telling clients who actually worked on systems before SAP that you could literally delete a document. I tell them, no, you can never do it in SAP. Documents are always there. You can reverse, you can't delete, but you can delete for extension ledger, because this is one scenario. Another scenario is even foreign currency revaluation extension ledger. If you do a simulation posting of your foreign currency revaluation, when the real revaluation comes in, it literally deletes that. So, and the prerequisite is as long as you have this setting, then the document really gets wiped out. Okay, so that's the IMG path for that. Create document type for transfer postings. For this transfer posting that posts any open items from the old to the new profit center, you have to create a document type for it. It's only one that it takes to just create, I put SA there, but whatever you want. Maybe you want to distinguish that this is a profit center reorg posting. You can define that in this config. The next is define open period for correction postings. At first I saw this and thought, what's the point of this? I'll try to explain this. So this is needed in case you do a reversal after you've run the tool, but that reversal affects a period before you ran the tool. So let's give an example. We're in November, right? Let's say I ran the tool. I need to put the first date of the month as the effective date. So I say I want the organizational change to run with an effective date of December 1st, okay? That means on December 1st, any open items with my old profit center will go to a new profit center December 1st. We'll do a transfer posting. Say in January, one of the documents that was open before December 1st, I decided to reverse it, right? So if it was posted before December 1st, it had the old profit center. So when I reverse it, it's reversed the document in the old profit center, but there needs to be a correction posting to reverse the transfer posting as well. But what if the date in December was closed? Because we're now in January. When you click on this, the system will automatically say, okay, December is closed. I'm going to do that reverse transfer posting in January. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So, and if it doesn't make sense, I'll say just check the box unless you want to, because if you don't, you're going to get an error saying the posting period is closed. Okay. Another one is define periods for purchasing and sales documents. And really with this, what happens is when the tool is looking at all the different objects, downstream objects, or what they call dependent objects, when it's looking at all the dependent objects that need to be chained, like sales and purchase order and all these other documents, it normally would look at it depending on the status. So for sales order, a status that says completed. Purchase order, a status that says final delivery or invoice or final invoice, right? But sometimes the status of sales and purchase order does not necessarily reflect if you're done with it, right? So instead, what this config does, it says, okay, if you put a number of months for the different types of orders, sales and purchasing, purchasing, sales also has its document types. Whatever number of months you put, the system is going to go walk back from the effective date, say it was December 1st, back 6 months and said everything, as long as it's not deleted or anything, any purchase and sales orders with the date is going to be valid for the reorg, whether or not it's completed or not, okay? So this is just a way of getting around the fact that the status of sales and purchase orders don't necessarily equate with if subsequent activities will be performed on them. Okay, then this other one is just very simple. When you check these 2 boxes, you're basically saying, hey, I want to activate organizational change and I want to transfer open items. Activate organizational change means I want to make it active, right? So I want, and then transfer open items means I also want to transfer old profit centers to new profit centers with a G for any open items with a JE journal. Okay. One of the things this box does is that it also allows cost centers to be, cost center master data to any changes based on validity date for the cost center master data will also be considered in the organizational change. There's 4 apps for org change. One is manage organizational changes. The other is, and this is the main app, right? You can define the effective date and enter objects that you're going to reorg. The other is the change reports. This is just saying, what is the impact of that change on financial data? This is what is the impact of that change on master data. And this is just saying, hey, give me a log of all the different steps of the change that I've made. So the next section is the organizational change processes. Okay. So now I'm going to step you through exactly this tool. And I have a demo at the end of this, but I'll step through with the slides, and then I'll show the demo in the system. I actually have a recording, so I'll let it play. So when you create an organizational change, first of all, I'd say this is super simple. This is actually simpler. If there's anything that I think this definitely tops the previous, it's a Fiori app. It's super simple, right? That's what I like about it. It almost feels like using like a mass tool. The previous tool was a little more technical, right? It still did the same thing, was still robust, but a little more technical. So you enter the ID. So what is the name of the organizational change and the description? Define that effective date. Remember, that's the important date. That's the date you're saying from this date onward, right? I want my the new profit center to replace the old profit center. That date could be today. It could be any day. But SAP recommends that you do it at the first of the month, right? And that is more for, I mean, there's probably a couple of technical reasons why, but I've tried it on a normal day. It works. But the main reason is because you'll have more consistency in your data for the month as opposed to a mixed bag. You specify which company. You can choose to say, I only want to do it for one company, a specific company code, a number of company codes, or a specific profit center, or you could just leave it blank. Okay. Then when you've done that, then now you need to tell the system which objects you want the profit center to change, right? So in this case, you can either enter it manually or you can import. There's a standard download a template you can download. In this example, it's material plant, new profit center, and just populate the system with that and click on import objects. I'll also show how this is done in the demo. Then simulation is what I was talking about, where you're now hosting a transfer from the old to new for any open items, right? That's simply just click on a button called simulation. It'll tell you when it's in process, and when it's done, it'll tell you when it's done. Okay. As I mentioned, when you simulate, it's not just a test run. It's actually doing a posting to the extension ledger, right? When you've simulated, when you look at, for example, FAGLL03, FAGLL03H, it looks exactly like, or even FBL3N, let's even go old school, right? Or a Fiori app for display GL line items. It looks and feels exactly like in normal JE posting. The only difference is the ledger would be, in this case, ZZ is my extension ledger. And your document number, remember, I said it's technical document number. It's not the ones that you define in FBA1, okay? But everything else looks the same. The currencies, the account assignments, the GL account, the doc type, everything looks like a normal document, right? And by the way, that this document stays the way it is unless you reprocess the organizational change, or two, if you I'm sorry, not reprocess. You resimulate the organizational change, or two, when you actually do the final processing, it'll wipe this out, like I said, and do the real posting. Then activation, I had mentioned that this was an optional. This is an optional step. You can do it if you don't want to wait till the effective date. You're like, nah, I want to do it right now. So you can optionally activate it. If not, it's just going to wait till the effective date. When you do that, all dependent objects, sales, purchase orders, production orders, they'll all be automatically considered. After you activate, though, you can't change it. You can't change the objects or anything on the organizational change. Then process, this is now where it really does what it's meant to do. So if you just leave it, you set it up and leave it for the process, the date, or schedule the process for the effective date, then all the assignments of the master data is done, right? And any transfer postings are done as well. So this would just pretty much be clicking on the process step, or like I said, you can even schedule it. And while it's processing, it says it's in process. If not, I'm sorry, when it's done, it'll tell you that it's finished. Okay. And once it's finished, that means all master data is changed on that date, and all the transfer postings have been made. Now, the transfer postings, as I mentioned in the simulation run, it posts to a simulation ledger or extension ledger, right? But you can report it just like you report any GL line item display. Extension ledger, for those who don't know, has to sit on top of a main ledger, right? Because anytime you report on an extension ledger, it reports the extension ledger and the main ledger together. So if you simulated the transaction, you could actually look at like a trial balance or like a GL report and put the extension ledger in, and what you'll be looking at is a report that's acting as if you have already made the organizational change, right? Because it will show you everything in your base ledger plus the transfer postings. When you do the processing run, it's going to delete the simulation and then do the actual posting to the leading ledger, 0L, and obviously you can do reporting. One of the other difference, when you do a simulation run, it does not change the master data. The master data only changes when you do the real run. Now, this is the real transfer posting. You'll see it looks exactly like the simulation. The only difference is one, ledger is 0L, the leading ledger, and two, the document number is the real document number, right? And obviously it doesn't get deleted. One thing to note is I mentioned that most GL line item display reports can allow you to view the changes, but the FAGL L03 would not display the transfer postings if it was for a reconciliation account for customer vendor. For that, you use the newer transactions like FAGL L03H or display line items in GL apps. So basically, the new transactions and apps can show you transfer postings for customers and vendors, right? But everything else you can see in all the display line items. So the kind of accounts that are eligible for transfer posting are inventory, fixed assets, deferred and accrued revenues, WIP, open AR and AP, and GRIR. Some things to note. Open item managed accounts are transferred for each item. Actually, this is a good point, because this is something that even in the last, it's the same thing in the last tool, but was confusing and a little annoying to some SAP customers. This transfer posting, it's really to satisfy document splitting, whether or not SAP says that's really what it is. It's to satisfy if you want to produce a balance sheet by Profit Center. It's not just doing it because you chain the Profit Center. And the reason I see that is what these points kind of highlight. Open item managed accounts are transferred for each line of the open item managed. So one, it doesn't deal with clear line items, only open, right? If it's non-open item managed, it's only transferred as one line, right? If you have 1 million lines in a non-open item managed account to the old Profit Center, you're only going to get one line, or at most you'll get as many lines as in the level of detail as your balance carry forward program for non-open item managed accounts, right? So if it's summarized, the transfer will be summarized. Okay. P&L accounts, this was a huge, sticking point for a lot of customers, are not transferred at all, right? It's only balance sheet. Because like I said, this only deals with, is only looking at if you're reporting by segment or profit center. That was really the objective of this tool in the first place. Because I'm like, why not transfer P&L if, but that is what it is. I mean, I don't know. I'm taking SAP's word for it that it makes even accounting sense not to transfer the P&L. But I don't know, maybe it's just a technical limitation that they're saying that's why. But the P&L is not transferred, only balance sheet. Okay, then complete an organizational change. When you do this, that just means you're done. There's no error messages. The processing has been done. Master data is updated. Transfer posting is made. Once you've done that, you can't make any further changes. All right. If it shows you it's complete, then it completes it there. Okay. And then there's also a change history in the app. The app change history is going to show you what is when it was created, simulated, processed, complete. So there's a nice audit trail of what has gone on in the app. And there's reports. I'll show these as well. There's reports that show what was the downstream impact of changing the master data on any objects like sales orders that had the old profit center. There's also an application log that shows you every step along the way what error messages, warning messages were shown during the process. There's also a financial data report which shows the financial results of the transfer posting. So now let me do the last like 10, I think it's a few minutes. Let's show this a demo that shows you a lot of what I've spoken about, but maybe with just seeing it in the system itself. Okay. Okay, so this shows that there's all the, for anyone with Fiori, these are business roles. The business role for organizational change is divisional accounting. It has the managed organizational change, then the reports, financial and master data, and the application logs that I just spoke about. Okay, so let's click on manage organizational change. This is pretty much when you go into this app, it's like a report. It's showing, because if you have other organizational changes out there, it'll show you can actually execute this to show that. You'll see the organizational change status shows you what is active, completed, inactive, and processed. So if you wanted to report just on one or more of those options, you could. Okay. The effective date, we'll talk about that soon. If I click go here, that just shows me any organizational change out there that I've done in the past. And then if I want to create it, click on the create button. Like I said, it's pretty simple to create. You just enter the organizational change name. In this case, I'm entering test 0C2, and then the description. And the effective date, like I said, that's the important one. Recommended to have it the first of the future period. If you only want one or more company codes, you can enter them there. If you don't, it's going to do it for everything. Same thing with profit centers. You could specify that you only want, well, it's going to be the old profit centers. You only want specific ones. If you do, just click on create and you can specify which profit centers. Otherwise, it's going to be wide open. And then in history, that's where it shows what's been happening, what steps of the process you've done. So here, I'm just going to show the next few tabs, all the objects that you can do this for. WBS element, what's the old and new profit center, or the project. You can do it on the project level. Obviously, that's if your project and WBS all have the same profit center. So you can enter the project name, old and new, and then you enter the new profit center. The project profile will default. For a product, enter the product and plant. The product type will default, and then enter the new profit center. For fixed assets, you enter the asset number and sub number if you have that. Description will default, enter the company code and the new profit center. And then I just want to point out something about assets before I go on to, so with assets, actually, I'll point out, there you go. actually went back. So with fixed assets, which was the next one, normally the fixed assets profit center comes from the cost center, but if you don't have a cost center on the fixed assets, that's when you might want to do a reorg for fixed asset. So now let's create, I'm going to do a creation of a reorg for products. So I could do it manually by entering the products and plants, but that's a pain, right? So it's easier to do an import objects. I already downloaded the template. It's pretty simple, just 4 or 5 columns. And the template, when I populate the template with the data, you can now upload it. It will show you the product, plant, the old and new profit center. Success just means, doesn't mean successfully reorged, it just means successfully imported, right? So now I click on import. Now it's up to me, this part, it's up to you how you want to do that. Just for this demo, I don't want to reorg all my products for that old profit center. So I'm just going to, I'm going to select only one of them, right? Just because just in case I need test data for something else. So here I'm just selecting all so that I can delete every other product except the one that I want to reorg. Okay, so just say delete there. So this should now show me just one product that I want to reorg. And if I'm good with that, I click on create. That should create the reorg. And when I've done create, like in this case, and that could happen, it's realistic, it will come up in a minute with a message, a couple of messages, they're warning messages. This just telling me that, hey, you're saying you want to reorg this profit center, but some postings don't have doc splitting, or they're not enriched, but it doesn't matter. I'm not doing this so that every posting to that old profit center has to have every line with a profit center. So now I've created it. I have now created the reorg for, and you can see that the status is inactive, meaning I can still make changes if I want. I'm not yet ready to process it. The next step, which I discussed, was simulating it. Now, this is when I said that you could now do a simulation, which will post the extension ledger. When you click on that button, it says simulation job has been scheduled. It takes maybe a couple of minutes. The status will say in process. So in the meantime, I'll just show you from this one app, we can go to several other apps that are related to either Profit Center or Profit Center Reorg. This is a useful one. The very useful app is practically, this will be the app that you go to first, because you might say, hey, for this Profit Center, show me everywhere that it's used so that I know what the impact will be on reorg. So when I do that, it shows me what allocation cycles, what config, what cost centers, what hierarchies, what orders, everywhere in the system this profit center is. That will give me an idea of what the impact of making this change will do on other objects. Okay, so that is a useful tool. I don't know if this was available in ECC, but it's a tool which is an app on its own that you can jump from the organizational change app to your where used list app. So just on this, so back to the simulation process, it's still simulating. I think it takes another minute. So another app I was going to show is the master data app. So this is the one that shows you for the profit center I want to change, what are the downstream objects out there that could be impacted. So when I open up the hierarchy, you would see that there's several sales documents out there which had the old profit center, because the product was the one that I selected, and tells me what the new one would be, and that the reorganization has not started. So I think now when I go back out and refresh it, I think we'll see now that the simulation is finished, and that was a couple of minutes. Obviously, it'll depend on how much data that you have. Okay. So I think here I'm just showing that the history, I mentioned this before, that everything you do, all of the different steps you make in the reorg tool will show you who did it, what time it was done. It's a very nice audit trail there. So Activator, I mentioned that, that's optional. You don't need to do that. Process, we won't do here because we're going to do, that would realistically be done on the date itself. So showing the app for master data I already showed. Actually, this is actually me trying to go to the financial app, which I'll do in a second. The two main apps I wanted to show, one was master data, the other was financial data. So this is the one that's going to show you what is the financial effect of the reorganization, right? What transfer posting has been made? And remember, at this point, I still haven't run it yet, right? All I did was run a simulation. So here I'm going to change the ledger from 0L, the main ledger. We shouldn't have any postings because I haven't run it, to ZZ, which is the simulated ledger or the extension ledger. So when I hit the go button there, so it shows me now product A, what's called product A, it's really Profit Center A to Profit Center B. It's showing the postings that have been made, the transfer posting. You'd see the 1906 up here is just went from one to the other. The 360 went from one to the other. And just so you know, you can see what's called transfer posting here. You have something called correction posting. Transfer posting is what I said it is, right? It's saying, I'm going to look at every open item out there, right? And see what has the old Profit Center and post to JE to go to the new Profit Center. There's also correction posting. Correction posting means what happens if I have now already done the reorg, but then somebody else changes a document before the effective date. If that happens, then the system has to do a correction posting to the transfer posting. If there was any like that, that would be in this over here. Okay. Let's see. So that's basically, and that's pretty much what it is, what I wanted to show here. So hopefully this gives you a flavor of the tool. Like I said, it's available from S422. I think it's pretty user-friendly, but very, very effective just based on questions I've been asked over the years about how this can be done in a systematic way. So I'm going to stop there and go back to the presentation and just give you a summary, right? So profit centers can be used as product lines, regions, and functions. The group that we have on this webcast seems to have more predominantly product line usage. Organizational restructuring occurs when a company's business model changes due to internal or external factors. Reorganizing profit centers can mean restructuring your organizational units. And this is where I said you don't need the tool for this, just that's a hierarchical change. Correcting the profit center, so you wanted B, but you entered A, you want to change it back to B, or a complex reorg, which is really now the more robust, kind of complicated restructure. The tool can be used to merge, split, or replace profit centers. And once the status is changed to completed, no further changes can be made. I'll add one more thing to that. SAP recommends, because you could have this a reorg plan for several profit center scenarios. They recommend only have 10 at a time, otherwise it'll affect system performance. Okay, so that's it. I'm going to hand over to Jess to read out any questions that we have.
All righty. So we've got a few questions that we can get answered. I've got one last one that just popped up. So the first one is there any possibility with a note or at a future date, SAP would consider this available for 2021 version? We are very interested in this, but are on 2021.
That's a great question. You would, and SAP has a term for that. I don't know if it's called downporting or something. That's when they release something for a future release, and then they kind of push it back to old releases. I don't know. The answer is I don't know, but I think there should be. I think it's an important enough tool that there should be. So what I would do is, I would say if you have whoever asked the question, check with the SAP rep. I'll also check on my end because it's a very good question, right? Sometimes SAP releases these tools, assuming that everybody's automatically going to be on the new tool, or they'll get it when they're ready. But no, some customers want it now, and they're not going to upgrade just because of one functionality. It's a great question. I say check with your rep. I'll also check on my end, and we'll post it in the when we post out the answers to questions. If I have an answer to that, I'll let you know.
Next question is, if I want to change the segment assigned to a profit center and update the balance sheet to reflect the change, do you have to assign to a new profit center, or can you update the segment on the existing PC and run this with the same profit center as old and new? Or is there a better tool for this?
Well, so the answer to that, I don't know if the person who asked this had the old tool, because in the old tool, you had Profit Center Reorg and Segment Reorg. One thing I want to tell you about this new tool is Profit Center field is the first one that has been released for this. SAP's plan is to make this, I think the next is going to be Segment, and SAP plans to extend this tool to other dimensions, which is why that's one hint in the name. It doesn't say, it's not calling this Profit Center Reorg. It's calling this organizational restructure. I think they're going to extend it to several other things. And I think it's great because, again, for those of you who don't know, in the past, the way to do this was either to pay for an SLT license and use that old tool, or go to SAP and to do an SLO. They're actually bringing this to make it available. So segments is next. So hopefully that would, again, unfortunately, it's not here right now, but segment is going to be the next field that's going to be, this tool is going to be available for.
Next question is, considering an ECC environment, do you recommend waiting for the conversion to S/4HANA and then reorg, or do it previously in ECC?
That's another good question. You know, my answer to that would be, you shouldn't plan your business solutions on what SAP is going to do. If you need to do it now, you do it now. Unless, of course, you plan to move. If you plan to move to S4 in the next year, then yeah, I'd say wait. But you know, for something as important as an organizational restructure and how reporting feeds off that, you can't wait. You know, I would say if you're an ECC, you know, you could do it the hard way. You know, the hard way, it's not like it's impossible. It's just that it's a very manual for you to change the profit center, change all the master data, change all the dependent objects, and also do the transfer posting. So it can be done, right? So I would say look at a couple of things. Look at what's the manual way to do it, right? Is there a way that you can create your own programs to do this, or do you want to use that old tool? Okay, I would say if you're not converting to S4 in the next year, you can't wait for SAP. Even SAP doesn't know what they're going to do in the future, right? Don't wait for them. You know, do it if you need to do it now, right? It seems like too important a requirement to depend on you know what SAP is going to do, or when you're going to, or what your business is going to do when they upgrade.
Final question is, can the reorg tool be used for cost centers as well?
The reorg tool. So the reorg tool is currently profit centers, then segments. I don't know if they're going to ever use it for cost centers, because cost center is such an obvious object that if SAP had planned for cost center reorg, that would have been the first. And one other thing to note is that in this session, in this webcast, you notice that when we looked at the app, you saw product, fixed assets, project, WBS, and what was the other one? Order, right? You didn't see cost center, even though profit center is on the cost center. In fact, cost center is one of the is the object that uses the profit center the most. The reason for that is because when you do a reorg, if it's cost center that's going to change, you don't put it in the reorg tool. You put it in the cost center master. For example, if I wanted to do a reorg for starting January 1st next year, go to the cost center master, change your validity period to January 1st to 9999, put your new profit center in there, right? Then go to the reorg tool and run the reorg tool. If you do that, it automatically goes to look at the cost center as well as whatever object that you're looking at. So SAP kind of takes cost center for granted that, oh, everybody's going to need it. So they didn't even include that in the reorg tool. It's basically a master data change, but the running of the tool is going to look at any cost centers that have a beginning validity period that equates to the effective date, and it's going to change cost center as well.
We did have one question pop up, but we are at the top of the hour. So I just want to say thank you, Paul, for presenting with us today.
Hey, Jess, I can answer the question if it's, yeah.
So the question is, the data is changed as of the change date, not historical data in the past. And then there's a question mark.
The data, that's right. The data is changed as of the change date, right? But if my change date is January 1st, right? Then any documents that are posted from January 1st will change, but any documents posted today with the date of January 1st will also change, right? Okay. Any historical documents will be reposted, but they'll be reposted with the posting date of the effective date, which is January 1st.
Okay. And we got that answered. Okay. So those were the questions. If you guys have any more questions, please feel free to email us. You can reach us at info@ERPfixers.com. We'll be happy to answer any additional questions as well. For all of you that joined us today, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. Once again, Paul, thank you for taking time out of your day to present with us. And just as a reminder, because everybody is registered who is attending, we will be shooting out an email next week, and we'll give you exclusive access to this recording as well as the answers to those questions that were asked today. So thank you so much, guys. Everybody have a wonderful weekend and have a great holiday.
Thanks, Jess. Thanks, everyone. Bye.